Welcome to the Unravelled Essential Blanket. I have my Uno yarn here, which I am going to cast on with. This is in the coffee bean colour. I have my needles. These are circular needles. So they are two needle tips which are joined by a cable. The reason we use circular needles is because we end up with quite a few stitches and it's just easier to manage. We are just knitting back and forth like you would if you were using straight needles. You can also use straight needles, but you may find that your stitches get a little bit bunched up and are not quite as easy to manage. I have two stitch markers which come in your kit, and these mark two positions on our pattern where we just change what we do at that point. So we will go over that when we get to it. Okay, so Uno yarn, take the label off, casting on, find the end of your yarn, and for this pattern we're doing the cable cast on, which is the more traditional cast on to learn, and it's nice and easy. So the first thing we do is make a slip knot with our yarn, so holding the tail in your left hand, loop the yarn around your thumb like so, and then just grabbing the working yarn, which is the yarn that comes from the ball. See how it crosses over in a loop there, and pass it through the middle of that loop, and then pull on each end, not too tightly, and that makes a nice slip knot. We're going to put our needle into that slip knot, so like that, and we want the longer piece, or the yarn that's attached to the ball, our working yarn that's called, we want that on the right hand side, and we have the tail. See how I've left about a 20 centimeter tail which we will weave in at the end of our project. We want the tail on our right, and just pull those two, or pull on that working yarn just so that it's nice and snug against the needle, not too tight. Grab the other tip. So I've got the yarn and the needle in my left, and I have the other tip in my right hand. So what we've put on there with our slip knot is our first stitch. So now we are going to do a cast on for our second stitch. So the right hand needle goes in to that first stitch underneath the left needle, so they cross like that. Take the working yarn in your right hand and loop that around and under the right hand needle over the top, and just hold it gently along your right hand needle. Slide that right hand needle back and just push it up and under and over the top of the left needle, and then you end up with two loops like this. See how I'm holding that tail, by the way, just to keep everything nice and easy to work with. So now we're going to just loop that second stitch onto the left needle. So taking our left needle, bring it round and just hook it into that second stitch and pull out the right tip. And there you go, we have two stitches. I'm not pulling them tight, keep them quite loose so that it's easier to knit your first row when we get to that. So that's our first two stitches. Now for the third and consecutive stitches, we are going between those two stitches. So we take our right hand tip, go under the left between those two. Okay, see how it's crossed over and it's between the two stitches. Take the right hand working yarn, wrap it around under the right hand tip and over the top, hold it back gently against the right hand tip, slide that tip back, and we are hooking up under our third stitch. And again, see how we've got the two stitches on the left, the new one on the right, and then bringing our left tip around and looping it through that third stitch, and there we go, 3 stitches. I didn't pull it tight, just keep it loose. Take your right hand tip again, going between those first 2 stitches. You might have to just wriggle it a little bit, that's okay. Wrapping the working yarn under the right hand tip, around over the top, holding it gently, sliding it back, and then, so you can actually pull that out a fair way if you want to make it easier to get your left hand tip into that new stitch, and then you can tighten it up, but not too tight, okay? I leave it a little bit loose. See how that's kind of, I can easily get my needle through. So we've got 4 stitches, let's go to 5. Between the first 2 stitches, wrapping our working yarn around over the top, holding it gently, push on the end, slide it back, pull that out and stretch it out further to make it easier to get your left hand needle in, and then just tug on that gently. Away we go. So let's get a little bit faster and you'll get a nice rhythm. So we're going through the first 2 stitches, wrapping the yarn around the right needle. New stitch is ready to go on the left needle, and away we go. Because we're casting on, if you're doing the bigger size, 170 stitches, it's quite a lot. I find it easier, rather than trying to count and losing count all the time, just to place a marker, say every 20 or 30 stitches. You can use just a piece of tied yarn, if you tie a piece of spare yarn into a loop, or just something to mark, so you don't have to go back and count all the time. If you end up with a few extra stitches, don't worry. With this pattern, it's not hugely important, as long as you don't have too many extra. 3 or 4 is fine. So how many have I got now? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19. So I'll just do one more and I'll show you what I mean about marking where I'm at. So that's 20. So I'm going to place a stitch marker on my left needle there, so I know that behind that stitch marker is 20 stitches. You don't have to do this, it's up to you. So now I can cast on another 20, just leaving that marker in place, and I can place another marker. So that's just a tip if you want to do that. Right, so I will carry on with my casting on and come back to you shortly. Okay, I am nearly finished casting on, keeping my cast on stitches nice and loose. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, so as you can see, I have put markers in every 20 stitches, so it's easier for me to count how many I've cast on. So I've got 20, 40, 60, 80, 120, 40, 60, plus another 10, 170. And we're going to take those markers out now. We're finished with them. As we come to them, we will just slide them off. So I'm ready to knit my first row. So all you need to do is make sure that all your stitches are on in your left hand. So you're holding them on the left. Your working yarn is ready to go. My right tip is empty, so this is going to be the first knit row. The first row is always the hardest because the stitches are new, there's not much work on the needles, and it's just a little bit awkward, but you will get the hang of it. Just hang in there and it gets much easier as you go along. So to start knitting, take the right tip and we go into the front of that first stitch. So you can see how I've done that. So my right hand needle goes under the left into the front of the stitch, crossing over. Take the working yarn, so you're holding all that in your left thumb and index finger. Take your working yarn, wrap it around and under the right hand needle like you did with the casting on, over the top of the right hand tip, hold it gently back against that right hand tip, slide it back, and then this time instead of adding the stitch to the needle, we are just going to slide that off. So we have knit our first stitch, and then we are going to do that again. So the right hand tip goes into the front of that next stitch, underneath, working yarn wraps around under the right hand tip, over the top, hold it in position, slide that right hand tip back, hook that new next stitch and slide off. So we have knit 2. Going into the third stitch in the front there, underneath, wrapping our working yarn around and under, over the top, holding it gently, sliding back, hooking our stitch and sliding off. Now we have knit 3. Into the front for the fourth stitch, underneath, wrapping our working yarn under and around, holding in position, sliding back, hooking that stitch and off. It should all slide pretty easily as long as you haven't cast on too tight. If you have, it may, if you're finding it really tight to get your needle in there, you may be better to do your cast on again and try and get it a little bit looser. Okay, so knitting is all about practice, and often we end up undoing knitting just as much as we actually finish knitting. So don't be too disheartened if you have mistakes or you need to redo something, because that's all part of the process. So into the next stitch, right tip goes under, working yarn wraps around and over, slide that tip back, hook that stitch and off. And once again, you'll get the hang of it, you'll get a nice rhythm, and you will get faster. So I am coming up to my first marker, which I used, whether it's one of these stitch markers or a piece of yarn that you've tied into a loop. Just slide that off, take it off, don't need it, put it down, carry on knitting. Okay, and then we are going to go right through to the last 3 stitches, and we do a special edge on our essential blanket. So I will show you that next.